Hello and welcome, Star People. It is 8 p.m. Your intrepid star guide, and this is episode 170 of the Outlaw Astrology podcast, where we take the inherited rules of this ancient practice apart, look at what's actually useful, and build something more honest in its place. Quick recap. In the last few episodes, we looked at what it means to grow in your chart rather than be defined by it, and how transits and progressions mean your chart is always speaking to the present moment, never just to the birth moment. And today we go further, and possibly further than some people might be comfortable with. We are talking about the myth of the complete chart consultation. And the idea here is that a single reading can tell you everything, that there's only one valid interpretation, that the astrologer sitting across from you or on the other end of a Zoom call has the final word on your chart. Spoiler, they don't, and any astrologer worth their salt will tell you the same. Before we get to all of this, a little housekeeping. First, you're the only authority on your chart, full stop. That's what this episode is about, and we're going to unpack why and what that actually means for you in astrology going forward, etc. But, quickly, if you like what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, and share and review this podcast, particularly wherever you're listening to this podcast, so the podcast can reach other astro-curious people who might also benefit. And there is a paid newsletter and a free option as well. It's called The Daily Stargazer by Outlaw Astrology, and you can find that link in the show notes. You can also find us on Instagram and Pinterest. Those links also in the show notes. And see if there's anything else. Nope, I think that's about it for this time. So, if all of what we've shared about the fact that you're the authority and that the whole point of the episode is the unpacking of the why that is, if that feels radical, good, because that's the point. Alrighty now, let's get it started. So, let's start with this appeal, because it is real and it's worth being honest about. There is something deeply comforting about sitting down with an astrologer and being told, here is who you are, here is what's happening, and here is what it means. We are meaning-making creatures. We want the map to be the territory. We want someone credible to hand us the answer. But a chart reading is not a diagnosis. It is not a verdict. It is definitely not a complete picture of a human life. Here's the structural problem. A chart consultation lasts at most maybe 2 hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours at best. Your life has lasted decades. Who has more data? That 1.5 hour to 2 hour reading, or you with your decades of life and life experiences? So, the astrologer brings technical fluency, pattern recognition, archetypal knowledge, all genuinely valuable things. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater here, okay? That's all very important. Smooches, chef's kiss, all of that. But we, you, I, all of us, bring something no astrologer can access. and that is lived experience of being inside the chart, in this body, at this time, in this specific life. Think about what that includes. Your family system, your culture, your class background, your neurotype, your traumas, your recoveries, your repairs, your relationships, your grief, your losses, your choices, your contradictions. None of that is visible in the natal chart. The chart is a map. The astrologer is a guide. But you are the one who actually walked the terrain. Now, that's the thing. It's very seductive, and to sell the idea that in a short 2 hours you're going to know everything about yourself that it is possible to know. Now, here's my own personal experience, what I will share right now. That's lovely, and it's useful, and it's a bit fixed. And my own experience is, yes, I've been seduced by that, but here's the thing. No system, astrology, tarot, runes, numerology, etc., is supposed to tell you things you don't know. Usually, when you get a reading, an astrology reading in particular, what they're going to say to you is going to be stuff that makes you nod. That's the best type of reading. It is validating what you already know about you. It's not saying things you don't know, never heard before. If you listen closely, you'll notice, oh, wait a second, I remember someone saying that when I was 10. I remember someone pointing that out about me when I was 16. Ooh, yeah, I remember someone saying that when I was 27. You know, oh yes, I had a friend say that when I was 35, or I experienced that myself and thought it myself when I was 35. So the whole point of the idea is it's easy to be seduced, given that we live in late-stage capitalism, which promises all the answers on a time period with the urgency implied that naturally this is going to be accurate and clear, and you're going to be legible and translatable. And that is just not the case, because I am a complex person, okay? I am not consistent all the time. My traits don't run across all things all the time, forever and ever, amen. There are times when I am very nitpicky about this particular thing right here, and there are other times when that same precision doesn't appear at all. What's going on with that? And there are other times when I go with the flow, and there are things where it's like, stop, no, that's not about to happen. Sorry, you know. So when I get a chart reading, all of that sounds very consistent. You're always going to respond this way. This is always the way it's going to be, which is why I was always confused. Can you relate? That you're like, wait a second, yeah, sometimes that's true, but it's not true all the time. So that's how I too, as a professional astrologer, have been seduced as well, which is how I ended up here with this podcast talking to you on this subject today at this time, because it's not consistent, it's not fixed. If the reading holds, this should always be true all the time, and it just isn't. And that is my experience when it comes to all of this. So, having said that, let's talk about what a reading can and cannot do. And let's get specific, okay? This isn't an attack on chart consultations. They can be genuinely transformative. They can be very healing. They can be clarifying, etc. However, there are still limitations. We are still people. The person reading your chart is still a human being. You're still a human being. There's no way to encapsulate all of the complexity that a human being is, because We have parts of ourselves that don't play nice. That's a quincunx. We have parts of ourselves that support each other. Those are trines. We have parts that rub against others, like when you get a new pair of gorgeous shoes and then you have to outfit the shoe because it doesn't fit correctly because it keeps rubbing on your little toe or the back of your heel or something like that. It's like that. Life is like that. Your chart is like that. We internally, we're like that. So what a good chart reading can do. First, offer a coherent, did you hear the crow? Offer a coherent symbolic framework for patterns you've always sensed, you've already done it, but you couldn't name. So it's like, you had that Moon-Pluto square. Oh, wait a second, yeah, that makes sense. At 19, your feelings were big and all over the place, and at 36, you're like, yeah, I got that. Sometimes I go to extremes emotionally. I now have a better handle on it right now. So it's a very different experience at 35 than it would be at 19. What changed? All the decades of experience between 19 and 35. And if you're doing the work, meaning working actively on it, maybe with a practitioner, with a person who can, witness you and mentor you and guide you and do so ethically and humanely and consciously, this results in having a better handle on emotions. You're not supposed to control emotions. You're supposed to use the information they provide to respond. That's the whole point. So that is what astrology can help you with. It can name things. Things that you're like, wait a second, I have noticed that, and this is what that is? Okay, great. Wonderful. 2, surface timing. So what cycles are active, what's ending, what's beginning, and what are we sustaining? 3, holding up a mirror with unexpected angles. So aspects or placements you've dismissed or overlooked would be here. I have a problem child in my chart. It used to be a problem child. I had Uranus doing a lot of things in my chart, and it was not a wildly aspected planet. It has aspects, but just not tons of them. And that comes off a little wild cardy because nobody actually has a real handle on Uranus. It's feeling free to push its energy out into the world, and sometimes rather indiscriminately, rather like the sun. All suns, by the way, for example, their energy, it goes out into the universe very indiscriminately, at least from our vantage point and what we understand about astronomy. Whereas, for example, a black hole is very discrete, very precise. It does not shoot energy out for no reason, and it doesn't do it indiscriminately. And I'm mentioning the two because there is a difference in precision and a difference in indiscrimination, okay? And so my problem child, Uranus, for example, it's like the sun just pushing out energy. So what that means is, for me, that those unexpected revolutionary moments that Uranus stands for would come, it would blindside me, is basically how that worked. I would get blindsided all the bloody time. And I always felt at a loss. It's like I'm unprepared. And I not only was I unprepared, I didn't trust, didn't believe that I had the ability to be able to get up on my feet once I got knocked down. Decades later, I've learnt how to roll with the punches, okay, as an example. And I didn't notice this when I looked at my chart. When I started studying it and asking questions, that's when I noticed the wildcard nature of my Uranus placement and went, oh, I see. And once I saw it, things that had happened to me as a teenager, moving into my 20s, started to make more sense. Now, 4th, it validates, a good reading can validate experience. So, sometimes Saturn conjunct your moon is genuinely hard. Okay, sometimes you're going to hear that. Sometimes you're going to have the astrologer say, yeah, Saturn conjunction Moon can be generally hard. And that's exactly what you need to hear. Why? Because Moon-Saturn conjunctions, Saturn, as I read it, in conjunction, I read that as a hard aspect, especially when it's Mars and Saturn in a conjunction with any planet. I read that as a hard aspect. So sometimes having boundaries about your feelings, because Moon-Saturn means being able to articulate, to express, to sit with your feelings is going to be bloody hard to do. Everything's going to be very serious, very broody, very mysterious. That's my experience with any Saturn-Moon connection. And so, yeah, sometimes when you're in your younger, getting a hold of your feelings, learning to when to express them, when to keep silent about them, how much to share, what to share, because Saturn is also about boundaries, and the Moon is about feeling and about your inner world. So it is a maturation, like we're thinking plants here, a maturation part where Saturn is all the hard lesson, the hard knocks at expressing your feelings in the wrong moment to the wrong person at the wrong time. You're just not going to get it perfectly. And to say otherwise, to say that Moon-Saturn can be fun and joyful, sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's the most honest thing you can say is to admit when something is challenging rather than trying to shine it up into a rosy glow and then sending the client away floating on a gorgeous, iridescent bubble of joy. That's called spiritual bypass, and that's not helpful. That's harmful. So, to go over it one more time, what a good reading does, it offers a coherent symbolic framework for the patterns you've already noticed, but you couldn't name. That's all. 2, it gives you timing. It lets you know what cycle you're in so that you can better acclimate yourself. So, what's beginning? What are you sustaining? What's ending? It lets you know where in that cycle, that 3-act cycle you are, so that you're like, okay, it feels like I'm in the beginning of something. Okay, there are going to be very different choices that you're going to make than if you're ending something. And there are going to be emotions with beginning a project and beginning a creative project than when one is ending something. Those are very different things. It's a very different process. And knowing where you are, that distinction is important because now we can be precise, we can be clear, and we can make better choices. 3, it holds up a mirror with unexpected angles. So any aspects and placements that are dismissed and overlooked, not unusual to dismiss or overlook aspects or placements. There are a lot of aspects and placements going on in that chart. It's impossible to see everyone. It's just not possible to see everyone all the time. Sometimes you're just going to be looking at your chart and go, oh, wait, you're there? I didn't know you were in this thing. I didn't know that, for example, you're like, I didn't know you didn't know you had a Saturn-Uranus sextile. You're like, wait a second, was that always there? Yeah. A good astrology reading can put the spotlight on things you don't usually see or tend to overlook. 4th, it validates the experiences. So having someone say, yes, Saturn conjunct your Moon is genuinely hard, meaning, yeah, I've had a hard time setting boundaries. I've had a hard time dealing with my feelings and being able to use them in a way that will allow me to make better decisions and respond better in my life. And so here's what a single reading cannot do. Tell you how you've integrated a placement. Only you can know that. Nobody can tell you that. 2, account for how you've changed. The chart is static. You are not. 3, replace the ongoing, iterative, sometimes messy work of self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is not fun. It is not easy. It is not convenient. It is uncomfortable. Okay, so a single reading cannot replace that messy work of knowing. And it is messy. Fourth, speak with authority about what a placement means in your life specifically. Okay? Having a Saturn-Uranus connection, you might have a connection like that in your chart as well, but how I experience it and how you experience it are going to be two very different things. These are just facts. So, the myth of the complete reading assumes that meaning is fixed, extractable, that a skilled enough reader can pull it out whole, hand it to you, and that's that. Meaning is made in dialogue, in relationship. It shifts with time, with context, and with the questions you're bringing. So, there is no, this is who you are, the end. I mean, that would be beautiful, lovely. I mean, if that's the way it did work, nobody would need to get another reading ever again. Nobody would ever be confused. You could just open up your astrology app, look inside and go, yep, that's what I'm doing. Yep, that's who I am. Yay, I'm done. I can just move forward with my life. It's all sorted out. All the thinking has been done for me. All the messy, uncomfortable bits have been edited out. Wonderful. That'd be great. I want this. I really do. My Virgo placements really do want this, but it is just not the way it is. So, a reading that you had at 25 about your Saturn return will mean something entirely different when you look back at it at 45. Not because the astrologer was wrong, but because you now have more life to read it against. Before, at 25, you don't have much life experience. The whole point of life experience, as far as I'm concerned, is that it lets you know what you're about, who you actually are. At the age of 25, you've been told who you are by people who think they know. Based on their observations, based on who they are, and based on who they are and their own life experiences, they're going to make certain assumptions about who they think you are, and that's just their brain attempting to make certainty out of uncertainty. It's a human trait. Everybody does it. That's the way that is. However, at 45, you've got 20 more years of experience, and you can go back and go, no. Like, for example, someone's like, you seem a bit chatty. You're a chatty on a Tuesday when the moon is blue, okay? But every other time, you're not chatty. You're not chatty with every single one. Or let's say that someone's like, oh, you seem a bit closed in and guarded. You see, someone told you that when you were 25, and at 45, you're like, actually, that's not true. There is a complexity to that. Let me share that nuance. The nuance is, I am a quiet person. When I'm around people I do not know well, I tend to sit back and I tend to observe so I can get me bearings. That's not the same thing as being naturally quiet because I like being quiet. It's just I need to sort things out and get myself acclimated, and that's what's going on, which is a very different thing than this is who you are, full stop, the end, and your life experience telling you that's not entirely accurate. And here are some of the points that would make it more accurate. So, does it mean, like I said, does it mean that person who said it, it might even have been an astrologer? If they said it, does it mean it's inaccurate? That's based on what they see, based on their life experiences. Consider this, astrologers are also human beings too. They also have life experiences. They also have had their traumas, their disappointments, their heartbreaks, etc. And they bring that to their readings, which might be with you. So they're going to be also putting a little bit of themselves and their experience and how they see the world, because they have birth charts too, to reading your chart. And so you have to consider that when you are getting a reading, that you're also getting a little bit of the person who reads the chart. They're going to notice certain things because that's their own inner world signaling to them what's important, what they value, what their ideals are, what matters most to them. That's going to be going into the reading. So readings are subjective. And that is all to say that only you can know what changed and what is still the same. Okay? That's the difference right there between two types of readings. One that honors you as the person with the chart, and the other that makes it fixed and deterministic, which we are trying our best to avoid. So, where does that leave us? Where are we going? Well, I think that leaves us with an authority problem, which makes me ask, who gets the final say? Well, that's easy, but this is where it's going to get uncomfortable, because the astrology world has an authority problem, and it's worth naming directly. And so there is a tendency in some corners of astrology to position the astrologer as an authority. That's the decoder, the person with the decoder ring, the one who truly understands what your chart means. And clients, that's you and me, especially those new to astrology, can hand that authority over willingly, because they want answers. I want answers. You want answers. And the astrologer sounds like they have that. That's our brains. Our brains really are wired for certainty. All our brains wants to do is check off something on a list and keep on moving. And so when someone comes along and says, I got the answers you're seeking, it's like, yay, 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 clap, 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 hurrah. That's how that is. And so, of course, we're going to lean in. But this dynamic can tip into something genuinely harmful. People changing major life decisions based on one reading, or outsourcing the discernment to a system they don't yet fully understand, or worse, to a practitioner, however well-intentioned, who presents certainty where there should be humility. And humility here means a clear and honest assessment and an understanding of one's strengths and weaknesses. We all have strengths and weaknesses. So this is not a self-effacement. Self-effacement can look like humility, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about being clear-eyed about where we are strong, where we are weak, meaning where we have support naturally and where we're going to need to rely on other people or learn new skills. Okay? And so let's be clear about what good astrological practices actually are and what it actually looks like. And so a skilled astrologer offers an interpretation, not instruction. They illuminate possibilities, not fixed outcomes. They work with you, not above you. So they're not looking down at you saying, hey there, young one, I got all the info for you. I know what to do. I know how to set you properly on your path. They can't do that. They don't know that. They don't know that. And anyone that tells you that they do, run in the opposite direction. Because there's no way that anybody but you can know how that's going to go out and how that's going to turn out and to make that actually happen. You're the only one that can do that. And anyone else that says they can is being deceptive. So, if an astrologer has ever told you you can't do that, Mercury retrograde, or your Venus placement means you always struggle with love, or this transit means your relationship is over, that's a red flag. That is not a revelation. Okay? Any of this or anything like that, those are red flags, not revelations. Move on quickly. Jog along and let them jog along as well. So there is no single correct interpretation of a chart. Different astrologers will emphasize different things, like I said, different life experiences, different belief systems, different values, etc. Will account for emphasizing different things. Will account for also using different systems. So different astrologers will use different systems, and they will reach genuinely different conclusions, and all of them might be partially accurate. That's just life. That's being human. No problem there. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but it's true. So the chart is not a fixed text with one authorized reading. It is more like a poem or a song. It's rich, it's layered, it's responsive to who is reading it and when they are reading it and what circumstances they are reading it in. The person most qualified to read your poem, your song, is you. With support, yes. With tools, absolutely. But ultimately, you. That's just how that is, and that is fabulous as far as I'm concerned. It's the best way for it to be. So, where to next? Well, this is where, what do we do with all this information? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. The shift is what we're proposing here at Outlaw Astrology is this. Stop looking for the reading that will finally explain you and start developing an ongoing relationship with your own chart. That doesn't mean you stop seeking astrologers, you stop seeing them, talking to them, asking questions. If that means you come to those readings as a collaborator, not a recipient. So that's what that means. You don't go to astrologers and start saying, hey, I'm here to passively receive while you actively tell. You're working in collaboration. They're working with you, not over you. They're a guide, not a guru. Okay, that's the relationship. Collaborator, guide, not guru, who talks from above you. And so it also means that you start noticing things yourself. When a transit hits and something in your life echoes it, write it down. When a square becomes a creative fuel experience rather than a frustration, notice that. When the opposition in your chart gets activated and it starts to resolve into something more nuanced rather than an either or, mark it. Notice it. Write it down. You are building a body of evidence that no astrologer can build for you. Your own lived archive of what this chart actually does in real time for you in your life, with your life experiences, your nervous system, and your psychic architecture. That's Jungian astrology terms I'm using there. That in real time. So that's what we're talking about. And so over time, this archive becomes something more valuable than any single reading. This is how you start to catch the moments when a reading doesn't land, when an interpretation doesn't fit your experience, because that's going to happen. And you have enough self-knowledge to say, actually, that's not how that plays out for me. So if someone says, well, you've got Uranus in your 10th house, which I do, and I was told once, you have a problem with authority figures and you need to fix that. Okay, I don't know how to fix that. That's not a fixable thing. Do you mean to say that what is actually happening is I'm working with Uranus in the 10th house, and Uranus is a rebellious, individualistic planet, and it doesn't like to be told what to do. It wants to go its own way, and it has a tendency to ask why this is and to analyze and self-analyze everything. Then yes, I've had that experience. But telling me that it also told me, the astrologer also told me that beware of too much ego. I'm like, I don't know what that means. See, vague, abstract, not useful to me. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with beware of too much ego. What am I supposed to do with that? Ego, by the way, is necessary. You need that. It's an interface socially. What they meant to say was egocentricity, which is a very different thing from being too egoic. Egocentricity is something you want to mitigate because it means that everything is about you and refers back to you, whereas having an ego is healthy. You need an ego as an interface with this world. Socially, it's the part of you that keeps track of all the rules that you have to follow and is discerning as you get older about which ones you will follow and honor and which ones are breakable and you can just trash and throw into the garbage. Okay? That's the whole thing. So that discernment that you get over time through living your life and the life experience is not arrogance. It is the appropriate use of your own authority. So think of it this way. You take medical advice from a doctor, but you'd also notice if their diagnosis did not match your symptoms. Your body is the primary data source. Same principle here. Alrighty, I think we've come to that close again, star people. Okay, so the myth of the complete chart consultation is the myth that is meaning is fixed, that the expertise trumps the experience, that one reading, however brilliant, can do the work of a lifetime of self-inquiry. Spoiler, it can't and it shouldn't have to. What we're building in Arc 3, which is this arc, is a different relationship with the chart entirely, so it's one where you are the living document. The astrology is the language and the conversation never really ends. And so, here's some journaling prompts. Think of the chart or a piece of Think of the chart, a chart reading or a piece of astrological information you received that really landed. So, did it resonate? How did it resonate? Why did it resonate? And what did you already know that it confirmed for you? And think of a reading, an interpretation that didn't fit. What was missing? What did the astrologer not have access to that you did? 3. Where have you outsourced your own authority in how you use astrology? What would it look like to take it back? So, next episode, we go deeper into how to actually build this relationship with your chart. We will include practical tools, reflective practices, and how to use transits as a real-time feedback loop rather than a forecast you're subject to. And quickly, if you like what you're listening to, please like, subscribe, review, and share this podcast so that others can find it too, wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. There is a newsletter, free and paid, and you can find those links in the show notes, and you can find us on Instagram and Pinterest, all links in the show notes. And with that said, thank you very much for listening, star people. And your chart does not have the final word on you. You do. Stay curious, stay critical, and stay in conversation with yourself. Peace and astro magic, star people.